We are often shackled by an unspoken expectation to mold ourselves into what others desire, to bend and twist until we are unrecognizable, just to avoid the discomfort of their disapproval. But ask yourself, at what cost does this constant compliance come? Our peace of mind is surrendered, our truth obscured, and our essence diluted. The desire for approval, like a shadow, follows us relentlessly, draining our vitality, yet never filling the void it promises. It is time to step into the light of our own convictions, to shed the chains of people-pleasing, and to honor the strength that lies within us. For it is in standing firm in our own truth that we are truly free. The silent chains of people-pleasing. It begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. You find yourself adjusting your words, your actions, your very being to fit the expectations of others. At first it feels harmless, just a little compromise here, a small concession there. You smile when you don't feel like smiling, agree when your heart disagrees, and yield when you should stand firm. But these seemingly small adjustments are the silent chains that bind you, one link at a time, until you realize you are no longer your true self. You have become an actor in someone else's script, reciting lines that were never meant for you. People-pleasing is a subtle form of self-betrayal. It convinces you that your worth is only valid when others approve, that your peace can only be found in their fleeting approval. But deep within, a part of you begins to suffocate, buried beneath the weight of endless compromises and the constant fear of disappointing others. You've been taught to avoid conflict, to seek harmony at all costs, even when it means sacrificing your own peace. But this is the trap. True peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to remain grounded in your own truth, regardless of external pressures. The more you bend, the more you are pushed to bend further. It is not their demands that control you, but your willingness to accept them as your own. Imagine for a moment what it would be like to stand without fear, without apology, in the full expression of who you are. To let go of the need for validation from others and embrace the freedom of knowing that your worth is inherent, not dependent on the fleeting opinions of the world around you. The chains of people-pleasing are not forged by others. They are forged by your own willingness to accept their opinions as your truth. Only when you realize that you do not need to bend to fit others' expectations will you begin to understand the immense power of standing firm in your own integrity. This is not to say that we should abandon kindness, compassion, or the ability to empathize. On the contrary, it is the strength of knowing your own value that allows you to give freely and authentically to others. But you must first learn to honor yourself before you can truly honor others. The chains of people-pleasing can only be broken when you recognize that your peace is non-negotiable and that the truth of who you are is worth standing for, no matter the cost. The fear that holds us back. Fear, like a shadow, often lingers in the corners of our minds, whispering doubts and uncertainties. It tells us that if we stop pleasing others, we will be rejected, abandoned, or cast aside. It fills our hearts with the belief that without the constant validation of others, we are nothing, worthless, invisible, insignificant. This fear is the greatest weapon of the ego, wielding control over your actions and decisions, keeping you trapped in a cycle of self-denial and compromise. But this fear is not rooted in truth. It is rooted in a lie, one that convinces you that your worth is determined by how others see you, by how much you can bend and contort to meet their expectations. It is a false narrative that keeps you in a perpetual state of anxiety, constantly worried about how you are perceived, constantly fearful of displeasing anyone. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few." The same principle applies to our emotional well-being. True freedom comes not from the approval of others, but from the freedom to be yourself, without fear of judgment or rejection. It is in the release of this fear that we find our true strength. Understand this. The fear of rejection is a natural human instinct. It is ingrained in us, a primal desire to belong, to be accepted within our tribe, our community, our circle. But this fear is not a reflection of reality. It is simply the ego's way of keeping you small, keeping you hidden from your own potential. The truth is that by standing firm in your own truth, you will not only attract those who align with your values, but you will also free yourself from the burden of constantly seeking approval from those who do not. This fear will always try to pull you back into the comfort of conformity, telling you that it is safer to remain in the shadows of others' expectations. But ask yourself, is it truly safer to live a life dictated by the opinions of others, or is it more dangerous to never fully experience the richness of your own life, to never truly stand in your own power? To release the grip of this fear, you must learn to accept that not everyone will approve of you, and that is not only okay, it is inevitable. The Stoic practice of negative visualization teaches us to contemplate the worst-case scenario, to imagine the pain of rejection or criticism, and to realize that we will survive it. We will endure. In fact, it will be the strength gained from standing tall in the face of fear that will allow us to live more fully, more authentically, and more peacefully. The fear that holds us back is not a reflection of reality, but of the stories we tell ourselves. It is a false narrative that can be rewritten once we choose to see it for what it truly is, a product of the ego seeking to keep us small, quiet, and obedient. The moment you decide to stand up for yourself, to embrace your own truth, the fear will lose its power, and in that moment, you will begin to live, not as a shadow of others' expectations, but as a beacon of your own self-worth. The empty pursuit of validation. The world around us is filled with a relentless pursuit of validation. Likes, comments, praise, acknowledgement. It feeds the ego, inflates our sense of worth for fleeting moments, and gives us a false sense of fulfillment. We chase after it, as if it is the very breath that keeps us alive, yet when we finally catch it, we are left hollow. It is a fleeting high, a temporary salve for a wound that only deepens with time. We must ask ourselves, what is it that we truly seek? If our worth is continually measured by the opinions and approval of others, are we not, in essence, abandoning ourselves for the sake of an illusion? The Stoics understood that our worth must be derived not from the external, but from within. It is the only way to live a life of true meaning and purpose. To look to others for validation is to surrender control of your own identity, to allow others to define who you are, rather than standing firmly in the truth of who you already are. In our desperate desire for validation, we often find ourselves bending, shifting, and compromising our values, beliefs, and desires to fit what others want from us. We lose sight of our own needs and desires, blinded by the need to please, to be liked, to be accepted. This is the great illusion of validation. It promises fulfillment, yet delivers emptiness. It is the endless cycle of looking outside of yourself only to discover that you are always the one you were searching for. True validation, the kind that nourishes the soul and brings lasting peace, can only come from within. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that you are enough without needing anyone's approval. It is the freedom to stand tall in your truth, regardless of how the world perceives you. To seek validation from within is not arrogance, but self-respect. It is understanding that your worth is inherent, not contingent upon the opinions of others. You were born with everything you need to be whole, to be complete. The pursuit of external validation keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and insecurity. We constantly seek reassurance from others, measuring our success against their standards, comparing our lives to theirs. But this only leads to frustration, for no matter how much validation we receive, it will never fill the void within. The more we seek it, the emptier we feel. It is like chasing after the wind, thinking that we can catch it, only to be left empty-handed. To free ourselves from this cycle, we must learn to look inward, to trust our own judgment, to find validation in our own hearts. This is not a call to disregard the opinions of others entirely. Feedback, when offered with kindness and wisdom, can be valuable. But it is a reminder that our worth is not defined by their approval. It is a call to stop seeking outside of ourselves for what we already possess within. When you cease the endless chase for validation, you create space for true peace. You free yourself from the tyranny of others' expectations and discover the deep contentment of living authentically. You no longer need to conform to fit into someone else's idea of who you should be. Instead, you become the architect of your own life, standing firm in the knowledge that you are enough, just as you are. Your value is not determined by others. How often do we place our worth in the hands of others? How frequently do we allow their opinions to define who we are, to shape our self-image, our confidence, our sense of purpose? In the eyes of others, we may be judged, misunderstood, or dismissed altogether. Yet we cling to their approval as if it were the very foundation of our existence. But if our value depends on the fleeting and fickle judgment of others, we become slaves to an ever-changing tide of opinions, constantly tossed and turned by the whims of the world around us. To live in this truth requires courage. It requires the willingness to stand alone, if necessary, to embrace your own worth, even when others fail to see it. It means rejecting the toxic belief that you must meet others' standards to be deserving of respect, success, or love. It is a call to break free from the prison of comparison, to stop measuring your life against the lives of others, and to start living by your own standards. It is important to recognize that others may not always see our true value. They may judge us based on incomplete information, superficial traits, or their own biases. But their perception is not the truth. Their judgment does not change who we are at our core. It is a reflection of their limited perspective, not an accurate measure of our worth. To live with the understanding that our value is not subject to others' approval is to free ourselves from the need to seek their validation. This is not an invitation to arrogance or self-centeredness, but rather to self-respect. When you recognize your inherent worth, you no longer seek to prove yourself to others. You act from a place of inner knowing, from the strength of understanding that you are enough, as you are, regardless of the opinions of the world. And in this understanding, you find peace. You find the freedom to pursue your path, to make decisions that align with your true self, and to live with integrity, without fear of judgment. The world will always offer its judgments, some kind, some harsh, and many based on misunderstandings. But the question you must ask yourself is this: who has the power to define my worth? The answer is clear: you do. Your value is not determined by others' opinions or fleeting praise. It is determined by the strength of your own character, the clarity of your own values, and the courage with which you choose to live your truth. The dangers of self-suppression. We live in a world that often rewards conformity, that praises those who blend into the background, who suppress their individuality for the sake of peace, acceptance, or success. And so we begin to shrink ourselves, to hide our true essence beneath layers of politeness, restraint, and compromise. We stifle our voices, suppress our desires, and conceal our emotions, all in the name of avoiding discomfort or rejection. But this suppression is not the path to peace. It is the path to destruction. When we suppress who we truly are, we are not living, we are merely existing. We are living in a cage of our own making, afraid to step outside the confines of what is expected or accepted by those around us. And as we continue to hide our true selves, we erode our own sense of identity. We lose sight of our values, our passions, and the very essence of who we are. In this self-suppression, we begin to forget our own voice, our own power. We become shadows of ourselves, quiet, compliant, and invisible. The Stoics believed in the importance of living in accordance with nature, in embracing our true nature, and in expressing our authentic selves. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." To suppress ourselves is to ignore the very nature that drives us. It is to deny the unique contributions we are capable of making to the world. In the act of suppression, we not only hurt ourselves, but we also deny the world the gift of our full potential. Self-suppression may seem like the easier path in the short term. It may be tempting to quiet your thoughts, hide your emotions, and withhold your opinions to avoid confrontation or disapproval. But in doing so, you sacrifice the very essence of your being. You may avoid the discomfort of conflict, but you will also miss the opportunity to live fully, authentically, and meaningfully. Every moment you suppress yourself, you lose a piece of your soul. You lose the ability to live with purpose, to make choices that align with your deepest truths. It is also important to recognize that self-suppression creates a silent tension within you, a tension that festers and grows over time. It manifests as frustration, resentment, and discontentment. When you allow yourself to speak your truth, to act in accordance with your values, and to embrace your uniqueness, you release the tension that comes with living inauthentically. You open the door to true fulfillment and peace. Yes, there may be moments of discomfort, moments where others do not understand or accept you, but in the end, the peace that comes from living authentically far outweighs the fleeting approval of others. The cost of self-suppression is too high. It is the price of living a life that is not truly yours. It is the loss of your own soul. So, take a deep breath and begin to shed the layers of suppression you have built over time. Stand in your truth, even if it feels uncomfortable. Speak your voice, even if it shakes. And remember, the world does not need another version of someone else. It needs the full expression of who you are. The courage to be unapologetically you. In a world that constantly urges us to fit in, to conform to the expectations of others, the act of being unapologetically yourself is nothing short of revolutionary. It requires immense courage. The courage to stand apart from the crowd, to embrace your uniqueness without the need to seek approval, and to walk the path of authenticity despite the fear of rejection or misunderstanding. To be unapologetically you is to fully embrace the person you are, without shame, without guilt, and without hesitation. It is to stop hiding behind a mask and to let the world see the real you, the you that is not shaped by others' opinions, but by your own truth. The fear of being ourselves is a universal experience. We worry that if we reveal our true selves, others will judge us, reject us, or worse, abandon us. We may even fear that our true selves are somehow unworthy, flawed, or not enough. But this fear is rooted in a false belief that we must be something other than ourselves to be worthy of love and respect. This is the great lie that keeps us trapped in a cycle of self-doubt and people-pleasing. The Stoics, particularly Epictetus, emphasized the importance of living according to our own nature, not according to the whims of the world around us. He taught that we should focus on what is within our control, the way we think, the way we act, and the way we respond to the world. Everything outside of ourselves, including the opinions of others, is beyond our control. Therefore, why should we allow the approval or disapproval of others to define who we are or how we live? Why should we seek validation from those whose perceptions of us are often shallow, incomplete, or distorted? To be unapologetically yourself is to recognize that your worth is not contingent upon the approval of others. You are worthy as you are, simply by being. You do not need to change, shrink, or apologize for your essence in order to fit into someone else's mold. Your thoughts, your quirks, your passions, and your flaws, they are all part of the magnificent tapestry that is you. When you deny or hide parts of yourself, you dishonor your own existence. And when you dishonor yourself, you forfeit the power to live authentically. Being unapologetically you means having the courage to express your thoughts, to share your dreams, to stand by your values, and to live according to your own principles, even when others do not understand or agree. It is to stop seeking approval and to start living for your own fulfillment. It is knowing that you are enough and that the opinions of others do not have the power to diminish your worth. The courage to be unapologetically you also means embracing vulnerability. It means accepting that there will be moments when you are misunderstood, when your authenticity may be met with resistance, or when you face criticism or rejection. But in those moments, you must remind yourself that your authenticity is far more valuable than anyone's opinion. For it is in embracing vulnerability that we find strength. It is through being unapologetically ourselves that we tap into our true potential, our true power. It is important to remember that this courage is not about arrogance or selfishness. It is about self-respect. To be unapologetically you is not to disregard the feelings or needs of others, but to honor your own truth while also respecting theirs. It is the balance of standing firm in your own identity while allowing others the space to do the same. It is the recognition that your voice matters, your presence matters, and that you do not need to shrink or apologize for simply being who you are. The journey to unapologetic self-expression is not always easy. It requires a deep inner commitment to honor yourself and the courage to face the discomfort that comes with breaking free from societal expectations. But the reward is freedom, the freedom to live a life that is truly yours, to walk a path that is authentic and true to your own heart. So today, take a step, toward unapologetically being you. Stop shrinking. Stop apologizing for your existence. Stand tall, speak your truth, and live your life with the confidence that you are enough, just as you are. For when you choose to be unapologetically yourself, you unlock the immense power and potential that has always been within you. The strength of setting boundaries. In our desire to be loved and accepted, we often forget one of the most powerful tools we have at our disposal: the ability to set boundaries. Boundaries are not walls. They are not about shutting people out or refusing to connect. They are the invisible lines that protect our energy, preserve our self-respect, and ensure that we do not lose ourselves in the chaos of others' demands. Setting boundaries is a vital act of self-preservation, an assertion of our own worth, and a declaration that our time, our energy, and our emotions are not to be taken for granted. But for many of us, setting boundaries feels like an act of selfishness. We fear that if we say no, others will see us as unkind, uncooperative, or even rude. We worry that we will disappoint people, upset them, or risk losing relationships. Yet, the truth is that failing to set boundaries is what depletes us. It is what leads to burnout, resentment, and an unbalanced life. When we continually put the needs of others before our own, we are, in essence, teaching the world that we are dispensable, that our time and well-being are less important than those of others. The Stoic philosopher Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Our time is precious, and when we allow others to encroach upon it without regard for our own needs, we waste it. We give away our power, our peace, and our sense of self. To set boundaries is to protect your most valuable resource, yourself. It is an act of wisdom, self-respect, and love. Setting boundaries requires clarity about what you are willing to accept in your life and what you are not. It requires the courage to speak up when something feels off, to say no when you need to, and to prioritize your own needs and desires without guilt or apology. It is not about being harsh or unkind. It is about being honest with yourself and others about what you can and cannot give. It is about understanding that your worth is not determined by how much you give to others, but by the integrity with which you live your life. The strength of setting boundaries lies not in the act of saying no, but in the understanding that you are worthy of respect and care. Boundaries teach others how to treat us. They communicate that we value ourselves enough to protect our time, our energy, and our emotional well-being. When we fail to set boundaries, we teach others that we are willing to be walked over, that we will always say yes, even when it costs us our peace. But when we set clear and respectful boundaries, we teach others to respect our space, our time, and our needs. It is important to recognize that setting boundaries does not make us unloving or unkind. On the contrary, it allows us to show up fully for others when we are able, because we are not constantly drained by the demands of those who do not respect our limits. When we set boundaries, we create a space where we can be our best selves and where we can give to others without resentment or depletion. The act of setting boundaries is not just about protecting yourself from others, it is also about protecting yourself from yourself. Often the most difficult boundaries to set are the ones we must set with our own desires, habits, and patterns. It is about knowing when to say no to distractions, to unproductive behaviors, to the habits that drain us, and to the pressures that take us off course. It is about taking control of your own life, your own time, and your own energy. As you begin to set boundaries, remember that it is a process. It may feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to pleasing others or putting their needs ahead of your own, but the more you practice setting boundaries, the easier it becomes. And the more you will realize how vital they are to your well-being, your growth, and your peace. You are worthy of respect. You are worthy of time. You are worthy of emotional and mental space. Setting boundaries is an act of love, not just for others, but for yourself. It is a practice that reminds you that you are enough, just as you are, and that your needs are just as important as anyone else's. And when you begin to honor your own boundaries, you create a life where you are free to live in alignment with your true self, without guilt, without fear, and without compromise. The power of saying no. In a world that constantly asks more of us, we often forget the simple yet transformative power of saying no. The word no is not an expression of hostility or rejection. It is a declaration of self-awareness, a boundary that protects our time, our energy, and our values. To say no is to assert that your life, your choices, and your peace of mind are more important than the expectations, demands, or requests of others. And yet, how many times do we say yes when we mean no? How often do we agree to things that drain us, overwhelm us, or pull us away from our true path? Saying no is not an easy task for many of us. We fear disappointing others, we fear being labeled as selfish or unkind, or we worry about the consequences of denying a request. But in reality, every time we say yes to something that does not align with our values, our priorities, or our well-being, we are saying no to ourselves. We are sacrificing our own peace, our own time, and our own happiness for the sake of someone else's needs, often at the cost of our own fulfillment. The Stoics understood the importance of discerning what is truly worth our time and energy. Marcus Aurelius, in his meditations, reminded himself to focus on what was within his control and to avoid being distracted by the demands of others that were outside of his purpose. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In the same way, we must not waste time second-guessing our choices or over-explaining our reasons for saying no. We must simply honor our own needs, knowing that saying no is a powerful act of self-respect and self-care. When we say no, we create space for the things that truly matter. We free ourselves from obligations that do not serve our greater purpose, and we protect ourselves from the emotional exhaustion that comes from overcommitting. Saying no is a form of self-preservation. It is an act of prioritizing your own well-being, peace, and growth. It is also a way of honoring the value of your time. Time is a finite resource. We cannot afford to spend it on things that drain us, deplete us, or pull us away from what we truly want in life. It is important to recognize that saying no does not make you a bad person. In fact, it is often a sign of strength and integrity. By saying no, you are choosing to be intentional with your time and your energy. You are showing that you understand your limits and that you value yourself enough to protect them. It is an act of setting boundaries that fosters respect, not just for yourself, but for others as well. When you say no respectfully and thoughtfully, you teach others how to respect your time and your choices, and in doing so you create a healthier, more balanced relationship with yourself and with the world around you. The fear of saying no is rooted in the belief that we must always please others in order to be loved or accepted. But this is a false belief. True love, True respect and true acceptance come not from our willingness to say yes to everything, but from our ability to be true to ourselves. When you say no from a place of honesty and integrity, you are honoring who you are and what you need. You are living in alignment with your values and your purpose. To master the art of saying no, we must first cultivate the courage to trust ourselves. We must trust that it is okay to prioritize our own needs and that we are worthy of doing so. Saying no is not a rejection of others, but a statement of self-respect. It is the recognition that we are not responsible for fulfilling everyone else's needs, and that we have the right to protect our own peace and energy. As you begin to practice saying no, remember that it is not about being rude or inconsiderate. It is about being clear and respectful, understanding that your time and energy are precious and that you are not obligated to give them away freely. Saying no is a powerful tool for reclaiming your life, for living intentionally, and for aligning your actions with your true values. So, the next time you feel overwhelmed by a request or an obligation that does not serve you, pause and ask yourself, is this in alignment with my values? Does this bring me closer to the life I want to create? If the answer is no, then give yourself permission to say no. Know that in doing so you are not only protecting your peace, but also creating space for the things that truly matter. You are honoring yourself, and in doing so, you are becoming the person you were meant to be. The wisdom of letting go of approval. We are often taught from a young age to seek approval, to chase after validation, to gain the approval of others as a means of confirming our worth. We look for it in our families, our friends, our colleagues, and in society at large. We measure our success by how many people are pleased with us, how many accolades we receive, and how much recognition we garner. But in this pursuit of external validation, we lose touch with something far more valuable, the inner peace that comes from knowing and accepting ourselves. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, taught that our happiness and sense of self-worth should not be dependent on the approval of others. Instead, they believed in cultivating a mindset of self-sufficiency, where our value is not measured by others' opinions, but by our own actions, integrity, and character. Epictetus famously said, "It is not the things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." In other words, it is not what others think of us that should affect us. It is how we choose to respond to those opinions. The pursuit of approval can be an endless, exhausting cycle. We are constantly chasing the next compliment, the next recognition, the next affirmation, only to find that it is never enough. The approval we receive from others is fleeting, conditional, and often shallow. It is based on external factors, how we look, how we behave, how we perform, rather than on who we truly are. And yet, we continue to place our worth in the hands of others, believing that their validation will somehow complete us. The truth is, we will never be able to control how others perceive us. No matter how hard we try, there will always be those who disapprove, who criticize, or who misunderstand us. And if we tie our worth to the approval of others, we will constantly be at the mercy of their opinions, never feeling truly secure in ourselves. We will be forever seeking, forever chasing, and forever feeling empty. Letting go of the need for approval is an act of radical self-empowerment. It is the realization that our value is inherent, not contingent on the external world. When we let go of the need for others to approve of us, we free ourselves from the chains of comparison and judgment. We release the weight of constantly trying to measure up to others' standards, and we begin to define our worth on our own terms. This is not to say that we should completely disregard the opinions of others. Feedback, constructive criticism, and support from others can be valuable. However, when our sense of self-worth is rooted in our own integrity and self-acceptance, we can approach these external opinions with wisdom and discernment, without allowing them to define us. When we let go of the need for approval, we also let go of the fear of rejection. We stop fearing disapproval or judgment because we no longer need others' validation to feel whole. We stop second-guessing ourselves, seeking reassurance, and changing who we are to fit into someone else's mold. Instead, we stand firm in our own identity, knowing that we are enough just as we are. The journey of letting go of approval is not an easy one. It requires courage, the courage to be different, to take risks, and to embrace our imperfections. It means choosing to live authentically even when it feels uncomfortable or unpopular. But the reward is freedom. The freedom to live a life that is true to our values, our desires, and our purpose. We become free from the tyranny of others' opinions, free from the need to constantly prove ourselves, and free to pursue the life that is truly ours. So how do we begin to let go of the need for approval? It starts with self-awareness. We must recognize the ways in which we seek external validation and how it affects our behavior, our choices, and our happiness. We must acknowledge that our worth is not dependent on others' opinions, but on the way we live our lives with integrity and purpose. It also requires a shift in perspective. Instead of seeking approval from others, we must learn to approve of ourselves. We must cultivate self-compassion, self-respect, and self-acceptance. We must learn to trust ourselves, to trust our own judgment, and to trust that we are worthy of love and respect, regardless of what others may think. As you begin to let go of the need for approval, remember that you are already whole. You do not need anyone's validation to know that you are enough. You are worthy, not because of what others think of you, but because of who you are, how you live, and the way you show up in the world. Release the burden of seeking approval. Embrace the freedom that comes from being your true self, unapologetically and without fear. When you do, you will discover a peace that is far deeper, far more fulfilling, and far more lasting than any external validation could ever provide.